Okay, go ahead.
There we go. There we go. Hey guys, do you love our technical difficulties sometimes? I'm Elizabeth. Thank you for joining us. I'm really glad to see you again. And if we have any new friends with us, welcome. Please let us know in the Q&A if this is your first class. And if it is not your first class, let us know how many you've attended. We love it. Chanel and I do a lot of the classes together. So it's really fun for us, especially to see returning guests and returning little friends. So please let us know in the Q&A, and then also let us know how old you are. I always like to know how old you are, so I know kind of how to tailor the class. Last time around, we had a really 3-year-old heavy class, which was shocking. So, but then there have been times where we had a lot of 8-year-olds. So, it really helps me. So please do that. If you can, we are going to be, let me switch my camera around. We're going to be making these fun little paper pumpkins, but let me show you here for the front facing. Aren't these so cute? Little paper pumpkins. So we're going to be making these, and I'm going to flip my camera so you can get a better shot. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be one of the easiest classes as far as supplies are concerned, because we hardly need any supplies for these adorable paper pumpkins. And you can make these as small or large as you want, but we're going to be making these little 1-inch pumpkins today, or they're 1.5, but it really does not matter what size you make. And we'll talk more about that later. So we would love to see your finished project. So tag us, would you? Learn with Michaels, or you can find me at La Cozy Casita. I would love, love, love to see what you have made. Okay, so we are going to need orange paper. You can use scrapbook paper. You can use the Creatology construction paper, whatever you have. Yes. If you just want to learn this method and you don't have orange paper, just use markers and color it orange, or just use the paper. Use whatever paper you've got. Then you're going to need scissors. I just grabbed this out of the Creatology craft case, and a pencil. And then this is funny. You're going to need tiny little twigs. See these little twigs? And this is what makes our pumpkin stem. See, you just pull it right out. Put it right in. And then you can tape it or glue it if you want. And you're going to need glue, of course. I did forget that one little piece. So I think it's better to use a glue stick on these, but if all you have is the white glue, you can use that as well. But I'm going to be using a glue stick. Okay. And then a paper punch. Like I said, mine is 1.5 inches across. Yours does not have to be. And if you do not have a paper punch, you can use any type of anything circular that you have around. We talked about this last class when we were making the little foxes. Do you remember the little foxes? I kept the little tiny origami fox. Look how cute. But we were talking about using templates for the eyes and the nose. So we were using coins, pennies. You could use anything that you have that's round. This would be harder to use up here because it has a handle, but you could use the bottom part, or you could trace around the top and then just fill in your circle here. So there's lots of things. If you just look around, you could use the bottom of a cup to trace around. There's lots and lots, a jar lid. So if you do not have a paper punch, the paper punch will be a time saver, but if you don't have it, you can use it that way. Last time around, we had a lot of teachers joining us, and teachers are kind of using this as like the little art kids hub kind of thing in their classrooms. And so if you wanted to, you could just make a template on the paper and then send it through the printer. And then each of your orange papers would already have your circles on them for your children, for your students to cut out. Okay. All righty. You ready to get started? Let's see. Let me clear off my space here.
While you're doing that, we have Boss Queen here again with us. She's watching from Panama, Central America. She's an adult teacher of various ages and abilities.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Welcome back. So I want to know if she's using these in her classroom. Very, very cool. Okay, let's see. Anybody else? Let's see. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Please feel free. There's plenty of time. I know you're grabbing your supplies, but there is plenty of time to say how old you are in the chat or where you're from. And why do I say I'm saying chat? I'm sorry, Q&A. Q&A. Don't use the chat. Q&A. Okie dokes. Are you ready? So we are going to go ahead and get started. And like Chanel said, if you miss something, it will be on YouTube tomorrow. So you will be able to find that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get started by making, and we're going to make several of these today. So if I go a little too fast, don't worry. I'm going to be making more. Okay. So I'm going to start by using my paper. Let me pull up a little bit here. There we go. Straighten it out a bit. That way you can get, since I'm working with a big piece of paper, you can get a better shot here. There we go. Okay, so we're just going to start by punching out our circles. Okay, I like to use punches upside down because then you can see really where you're popping your circles out. So that way you're not overlapping. Do you see that? So if you are punching on this side, you might not always remember where to start, or maybe you'll get some overlap, or you think you're there and then you end up wasting a lot of paper. So I like to use it upside down, and then that will tell me like, oh, keep going, girl. So then I'll go over and punch it out. Okay. So we're going to just go around and just keep punching. Okay. And if you have just grabbed a template, whether it's a cup or a lid of some sort, a smaller lid, just go ahead and just start tracing a bunch of circles. And if you're not sure what it means to trace, because, you know, sometimes we have new crafters and everyone learns a new skill at one time or another. So I'm going to show you what it means to trace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to punch out a circle from a different color so you can see the contrast on the paper. So this is what you do. You hold on to whatever template you have. Like I said, if it's a lid or a cup or whatever it is, hold on to it. And then with a pencil, you're just going to go around the circle. And you're not pressing too hard. You're just going to go around and trace. And if you write on the template, that's totally fine because that's what it's there for. It's a template. It's kind of like a stencil. It's like a opposite stencil. Or you could use stencils. Sometimes people have stencils lying around with shapes on it. And then you would just cut that circle out. Okay. So you start doing that. We're going to need, let me see. And there's really no rhyme or reason, but let's count to see how many we used on this one. We're going to start here at this gap. One, let's see, let's start on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I use 15 circles for this pumpkin. There's no wrong or right. I could have added more. I could have used less. It just means that you'll have more space between your pumpkins or they'll be closer together. So pretend I used 30. If I use 30, here's the halfway mark. So that's what your pumpkin's going to look like. I use 15, so it's more spread out. So it really just depends on how you want to make your pumpkin. But we'll go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll do 3 more to make 15. Okay. So now we have our 15 circles. The step, and again, if you don't have a paper punch and you're working on your templates, just keep on tracing. Okay, we're going to fold each of these in half. You're just going to fold each of these circles in half and get them matched as best as you can. If you can't match it right together, that's okay. Just try your very best. And I'll zoom in for you. And I think I might turn up my light a little bit because it's getting darker earlier now. There we go. Okay, so you're going to there you go. You have a perfect match. It looks like a mouth, doesn't it? Like a little puppet mouth. So you're just going to keep folding. That's all we're doing. So you fold. It's kind of like an assembly line where you just keep on folding. And then the next part, we're going to do the gluing. But we're not gluing these together. You're not going to glue these folds together, but you are going to glue one piece to the next piece. There we go. I've heard several teachers saying that they are going to be making the heirloom corn that I made. Do you remember the heirloom corn class? Do you remember this class? So several teachers are going to be making that with their class next week for Thanksgiving. Isn't that fun? And remember, we made the little name tag on them. Thought they were cute. So imagine if you have these and you make the pumpkins, wouldn't that be cute on a little plate, kind of like a nameplate tag, nameplate. Last time I couldn't remember it either. Nameplate. Okay, and then go ahead, Chanel.
We have a few messages in the Q&A I was going to read out to you.
Please do.
So EJ says that she does use the crafts while she's teaching.
Oh.
Then we have Teddy, who is 5 from Pittsburgh.
Welcome.
Cornelia from Utah, who is 9. We have Darlene, who's 57, and she says that she used to use kids crafts with Alzheimer's patients.
Oh, that's so precious. Wow, that's a great skill.
We have Lydia, who is 62. She says she's battling brain cancer and trying to follow directions with limited cognitive abilities. And she says, thank you for doing this.
Thank you for being here. Wow, I love that. I love that you are using your brain in that way. That's awesome. It's like exercise for your brain. Way to go.
And then the last message is Allie, age 9.
Hey, Allie. Glad you're here. Love this. So fun. We're starting to get more adults joining us, which is super fun. Don't you think, Chanel? Got a good little mix. I love it.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, so I've got mine folded. And now I'm going to show you the next step. So hopefully, let's recount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oops. There we go. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 3 rows of 5. We've got 15 circles. Okay, so now what we have to do with these circles is we need to make them so they're going to take on the shape of a pumpkin. Sorry, I'm moving. There we go. There we go. Now we're rocking. Okay, so you can see here, I made a template. You know, we were talking about templates earlier. I made myself a template, and this template has a flat, it's a circle. It was a circle. But what I've done is I've made a flat bottom and I've curved the inside in a little bit. Do you know how we kind of make paper hearts around Valentine's Day where we curve in that end there? You guys know for sure. So when we are making our paper hearts, we've got our folded paper, and you know how we come in like this? Let me get a marker so that you can see better. We come in like this, and we go around, and then we cut that, and it makes a paper heart, right? Well, that's kind of a similar idea as to what we're doing with our pumpkin template. But instead of just coming in here, we're going to flatten this out. And we're not going to come in as deep. You could, because pumpkins grow all different ways, right? But we're not going to go in as deep. So we're kind of going like this. We already have our circle. And then we're cutting off the bottom. It's going to kind of look like that. I just made a bigger version of what I have here. Okay. So let me grab, I'm going to use, you can certainly use a pencil. And in fact, that's what I've asked you to use, is a pencil. But for me, just for the sake of showing you, I'm going to grab a marker because I want you to see it. Okay. So you're going down and across. You're just making one template right now. So you're kind of coming in a little bit, and this one's straight across. Do you see how it's just barely, I'm just barely taking off a little bit right here. If I go too much, I'm going to have a pretty flat pumpkin. So just barely make a line here on the bottom and up here. And it doesn't matter which side you have your fold on. It really doesn't matter. But I'm just coming in a little bit, just like that heart we were talking about. Okay. So I'm going to leave that there so you can kind of see the template, because then what happens is when you cut that, this is the shape you're going to get. Do you see how it kind of looks like a heart, but flat? Do you see that? Can you believe that's going to turn into this pumpkin? Looks like it, doesn't it? Okay. So that's what we're working with. Okay. I'm going to leave this here so you can kind of see it. Let's make our other one. And then this has become my template now. So what I do, I'm going to show you. This is what I'm going to do. So this was my, see, I even wrote on here, master. So I made my little template. I'll make another one so you can see where you're just coming down like this and one straight across. I'm going to cut one just so you can see it, but I don't remember how we were talking about that assembly line. So we're going to make our templates first, and then we'll cut them all. But I'm just going to show you again, kind of rounds it and then straight across. And there's our template. Okay. So now I'm going to use one of these to be the template for every single pumpkin, because what's going to happen if I use, now if I started with this template, and now if I take this one and now this becomes the template, well, now my template has changed a tiny bit. So keep your same template. Okay. You're going to keep the same template, and you can write on it master or template or T for template. So you know which one is your template, and you're not going to get it mixed up with all the other ones, because you want the same pattern. Okay. And if you're ahead of me, you go for it. All right. So I've made one. I cut one. Now I'm just going to go down the line. Remember, assembly line. And I'm just going to be making my black lines on my circles. Okay. So you go ahead. Like I said, you can use pencil. I'm using marker just for the sake of you being able to see it. I do not recommend using a marker because if you do not cut the marker off, you're going to see the line. So you can see a little bit of this line here. I didn't catch all of it, just a little tiny bit right here. But I recommend using a pencil because then you won't see the line. All right, so I'm just going to go down and just keep on keeping on. So if you're catching this YouTube, this will be the part that you just kind of want to fast forward because I'm just doing this 15 times. And then just line it up here. You're lining the edges up. And then make your dip and make your straight across line. And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to grab a little paper here. I don't want to accidentally write on my, is that hard to see or easy? Is that okay to see? That might be too not contrasting enough. I'm going to grab yellow because yellow is a nice fall color. You know, I thought this would be cute to use. You could make apples with this. You could do grapes. Grapes would be so cool if you had a whole bunch of grapes. That would take so much time, but it would look so fantastic. Ooh, where's my template? There it is. It's a good thing I had it labeled. Make sure you put a T on it, okay? So you know it's your template. That way you won't get a new one and then your template won't change. Your master copy. So make the little dip there and straight across. So you're going to keep doing this until you get to 15. Again. And across. It was fun trying to figure out how to make these. Then there was another pumpkin I was thinking about doing, and I was like, whoa, I can't remember exactly how we put it together. But I remember working and working and working on it. And then I finally thought, you know what? This is going to be a little too tricky for a kid craft. I could see it adults doing it, but as a kid craft, it was a similar idea with using paper to make pumpkins, but it was almost like a little lantern pumpkin or something. I think it just really made it tricky. So this is the one that we settled on, and I really like this one. I think it's pretty cool because it's pretty basic, but it's also, you know how crafts can kind of be soothing a little bit sometimes? Where it's just like you can do the same thing over and over and not really think about it. It's just like a calming activity in a way. And then do I have one more? Wow, look, see, that went fast. All right, one left, maybe two. Yep. Cool. That part went fast. Once you get going. Now, if you just wanted to, like I said, assembly line a whole bunch of these. So if you wanted to punch out 30 or 60 to make 4 pumpkins, and then you folded all 60 pieces of paper, and then you made the template for all 60, you could do that. Okay. Ta-da. All right, are you ready for round 2? Let me make sure I've got one right here. Let me just double check. Oh, I forgot just one little guy. Sorry. Here we go. Little friend. Didn't mean to forget you. All right, so here we are and straight across. Okay. So now this is what we're going to do. We are going to now just cut. So I'm going to cut under the line. Now, if you're new to cutting, remember your thumb goes on top, your fingers go on bottom, and you open, close, open, close, open, close. This is really good practice, especially for my younger friends. This is really good for motor skills, fine motor skills, to grow those strengthen those fine motor skills. And cut again. I was cutting something at school. I don't know what it was. I think it was straws or something for some type of craft. And they were just flying across the room. And I was trying to shield my friends from it. I think I was doing some type of counting or patterning. I can't remember what it was. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like I had to shield my scissors because they were just going flying across the room. And one of my friends said, hey, he threw that at me. And I was like, sorry, that was me. He was like, what? I didn't throw anything. Made me giggle. Okay, straight across. Has that ever happened to you? So now you're seeing that there's a bottom and there's the top, right? So this kind of heart top that we talked about, that's the top. And this straight line is the bottom. There we go. How many do we have left? We have 5. Now it goes a little fast. So this would be something fun if you have read alouds going for my teachers. This is something you can do while you have a read aloud going, because once you know how to do this, you can do so many. There we go. And then the kids can just chit chat with each other. So my kids who are with me, is this a craft that you'd like to do in your classrooms? If so, you should tell your teacher. They have got a fun craft to do for our feast, if you're having a feast. I want to know if you're having a feast at school. Let us know in the Q&A. Are you having a feast this year or no? Sometimes we'll just have popcorn. Sometimes there's big feasts. I don't know if they still do that. All right. Got all my pieces here, all 15. Now we're ready for our next step. So if it's easier for you, you don't have to do this. But I'm just getting mine ready by putting them flat side down and the round side up. And I'm making them all face in the same direction. But it's not necessary. Look at that. I forgot one. It's a good thing I'm doing this, because then I realize. So to have 15, we're going to have 3 rows of 5. Okay, here's my last guy. Sometimes they get nestled together and then we forget about them. There we go. Okay. So now we're getting there, guys. I'm going to get my little mat out. I love using my mat because it keeps things from getting, it keeps my gray mat from getting sticky, but it also shows a reflection from my ring light sometimes. So we'll see how well we can do. All right. So now what we're going to do is, I'm going to show you here. What I've done is I'm taking these folded pieces and I'm gluing them to the next piece. Okay, so let me show you here again. All I've done is glued, I have not glued them closed. Don't glue them closed. You're going to close it without glue. And you're going to glue it to a second piece closed. Let me show you what it looks like. So I have a little dab will do ya. And then I've got this closed pumpkin and I'm matching the bottom to the bottom, the top rounded part to the top round. As best as I can. I'm feeling, kind of making sure that they're all kind of lined up. Just like that. Okay. So that's what we have. Just those two pieces were glued together. Do you see it? Does it make sense? So again, I took the two pieces. Let me let it come into focus here. It doesn't want to come into focus. Look at that. Why isn't it focusing? That is so funny. You know what? I wonder if it's the mat doing that. All right, let me take this mat off. Let's see if it'll come back into focus. Isn't that strange? That hasn't been blurry the whole time. That just started, right, Chanel? Let's see here.
Yeah, it just started.
Let me see. Okay, we're focused, we're focused, we're focused. We're focused. It's like when it gets down here, it doesn't know what to do. Technical difficulties. Hold, please. Let's see if I remove the yellow. It's so odd. Okay. I do not know. Let me see. I pull it up a little. Or down. There we go. That's better at least. Okay, we're just going to keep rolling. Okay, so remember, now we've taken, I was in the middle of showing you, I lined up those bottom pieces to the top pieces. I only make sure, this is what we can say to make sure that you remember how to, you keep the door closed, okay? Don't open the door. Keep the door closed, okay? Keep the door closed. All right, then you're going to glue, match. So lay one on top of the other, just like that. Okay. So what you're going to do, now I'm going to add those doubles there. So here's the one I just glued together. I'm adding on top of this one. So now I have 4. Okay, check it out, guys. Check it out. Check it out. Look, it's starting to become a pumpkin. Okay, here we go. Now I've got to glue. Let me work in batches of 2. Keep the door closed. Okay, now put this guy right on top. Now a little glue here, a little double do. Yeah, you notice I haven't even rolled up my glue. Now, how many do we have now? 6. We might have 6. Look at there. And if it's not perfectly perfect, don't worry. So you can see mine right there. See how it's not perfectly aligned? It's okay. If it's major, then I would, like if you glued one kind of like this, then what's going to happen here is it's not going to give you a nice flat base, a flat part to let your pumpkin sit on. Okay. So just make sure that your base is all pretty similar. All right. But don't worry if it's just the teeniest bit off. That's going to happen. See that? It's made to happen. All right. Because that is what handmade is, right? It's not perfect. It's made with love. All right, here we go. 1, 2. Now a little bit more glue. And then here's my stack of pumpkins. Stick it on there, make sure everything's lined up. I kind of am feeling it with my fingers too, guys. I'm not just looking, I'm also feeling, making sure it's all kind of even. All right, we've got 2 more here. Glue, keep the door closed. Glue again. Glue again. And now my stick. Pick it up and feel, make sure. Yep, everything's mostly even. Look, it's so cute. You guys, wouldn't this be cute? Just like you could just have it kind of flat like this if you wanted to. Like on a little placemat. You could write your person's name. Like, let me do Lena's. Like if you're doing a cute like kids placemat. So you could write your friend's name and you could glue this just like this on right on the placemat, and then they could eat right there. Wouldn't that be cute? Like if you did something in your classroom, if you're going to have a popcorn party or feast, that would be fun. Just kind of have a flat pumpkin, or you make the whole pumpkin, your little stick, and then you got that. But these are 2 options. It's kind of like a pop-up book. Remember the pop-up books back in the day? All right, let's keep going. We're almost there. I just had thought of that idea and wanted to share it. I love a good tablescape. Do you know what a tablescape is, friends? Like if you make your table kind of fancy. Think about like if you've done a tea party before and you make it all, you set up all the dishes and all the napkins. You just make it real cute and fancy. I love doing that on my tables. So I have mine set up for Thanksgiving right now. I've never made place card holders though, which I think would be cute.
Lydia, excuse me. Lydia says she's using glue tape instead of the glue stick, and it's working great for her.
Ooh, great idea. I bet that will last a really long time too, Lydia. Thanks for the tip. Great idea. Double stick. That's great. Ooh, these are looking so good. Is anybody making a bigger pumpkin? Let us know. Are you making, what size is your pumpkin? Are you making the 1.5-inch pumpkin? Or is your pumpkin bigger? All right. Now we're at the last one. This is number 15. Número 15. We're on 15. So what you're going to do is I glued this side. Okay. So I'm going to put it on the pumpkin just like we've been doing. Nothing has changed there. Now, this is the change. Okay, we've got them all together. Now we need to glue these 2 ends together. Okay, so what you're going to do, and I suggest putting a little extra glue on this last one because it's kind of the anchor. And bring your ends together just like this. There we go. And then you're just going to kind of space these out. Isn't that so cute? Space them out. Oop, sorry, I was out of shot. Okay. And then you grab your little twig. You can grab any size twig and you're just going to put it right in that little hole right there. Now, if it does not stay on its own, this is because it's a little thicker. But if you chose a skinnier twig, and if you don't have a twig right now, you can grab it later. But if you chose a skinnier twig and then it kind of falls out, this one won't, thank goodness, because it's bent. But if it just falls straight through, you could glue your twig with some school glue and then just stick it in there and give it a chance to dry. and then it'll stay put. Okay. I'm going to use this one. So cute. Do you love it? I love it. So adorbs. Okay, so then you can put it right there. Time to eat. And it would be so cute with a little plate on here. Can you picture it now? I can. All right, let's make another one. Shall we make, I know we said pumpkins, but I kind of want to see what an apple would look like. It'd be cute, right? Because we're still in apple season here for sure. Let's just see. It's the same thing as the orange pumpkin, but I just think just for variety and funness. This is a thinner piece of paper. This is actually from my origami fox class. It's just some origami paper. So this is punching much thinner. So my friends who worked on crafts with Alzheimer's patients, I also wonder if some of them were a little bit older where they may have some arthritis in their hands and it might be harder to use a punch. So using origami paper is a great way, a great paper to use because it's not as thick and it's not as hard to get through. How many did I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I just need a couple more, or I could stop here. I'm just going to try to get those 3. Just stick with 15. I would think the apple would pretty much look like the pumpkin, except we have to add a little leaf. I'm dying about the grapes. I think the grapes would be so cute. It'd just be a lot of work to make a whole cluster of grapes. But wouldn't that be cute? You could have a whole cornucopia of fruit. You could do that in your class. You could have different kids bring different things for to fill the cornucopia. That'd be cute. Okay, here we go. All we have to do is fold. So we're going to fold 15. And if you're still on pumpkin, go for it. There is no rush. I'm just going to fold away. Sometimes it's hard to see. Here we go. Sometimes it's easier just to pick it up and fold it and then put it back down. How are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. You know how I like to rock and roll on the second one. Once I've taught you how to do it, then we like to get rocking and rolling and go a little bit faster. If you have any questions, please let us know in the Q&A. Or if you have any ideas, we talked about you could make an apple, you could make pumpkin. What are some other things you could put inside a cornucopia? Or some fruit that's round that you could make in this way? Or what are some other things you can make in this way? I think I saw somewhere that they made like a little elf, like a little, or a Santa belly and a Santa, or you could make like a snowman. I wonder if you put one on top of oh, you could look. And then put little eyes and a little scarf, kind of make it like a Santa or a snowman, make this a smaller part for the head. Like maybe you're going to use 1-inch circles instead of 1.5. That'd be cute. So many ideas, but I want to hear if you have any ideas, any things that I haven't said, or you just enjoying your crafts. Let's see. Okay. Look at how fast that went, guys. Didn't that go pretty quickly? All right, so we are going to go ahead and start. Oh, I forgot my template, didn't I? Can't start gluing without the template. You could even make this just a tiny bit different if you wanted to. I wonder what it would look like without. It still needs to come in a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to keep it as is. Maybe I'll not go in as far for the apple. Let's see. So you remember how we made kind of a heart? I'm not going to go in as far on this template because I just want to make it a little different from the orange, the pumpkin. So just barely went in and straight across. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to mark this T for template. And then I'm going to go. I'm going to make a whole bunch of this, okay? Here we go. Don't you like it on YouTube when they're like, doot, 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 and they're like fast forwarding everything? Sorry, we don't have a fast forward for this one. Oh, I got to grab my papers. I don't want to mark them. Not here. You know what? I just came up with an idea. I am only going to make, because this is such thin paper, you could really stack. I'm going to try 4 at a time and cut all 4 pieces at a time. I don't know that I would do that with the construction paper. You probably could do it with 2 at a time, but construction paper can be pretty thick, and then it's more difficult to cut with the kids' scissors. You know what I mean?
We have a suggestion on other things you can make. Cornelia says that she just thought of using wrapping paper and making Christmas ornaments out of it.
That is adorable. That is so smart. Cute, cute idea. You could do little presents for people. That's cute. Oh my goodness. The sky's the limit, really, when you start thinking about that, Cornelius. Cute idea. My mother-in-law, each year, she'll buy those glass bowls, the glass bulbs ornaments, and then they're clear. And then she uses overhead transparencies, and she'll take a picture and print it on that overhead transparency. And then she puts it inside the bulb. They're so cute. And then when the light shines through them, kind of lights up in the back. They're so pretty. Okay, I'm going to stop there with my templates because remember I said I'm going to stack them up. So I've got 2. Let me just try 2. Let me see how thick 2 is. So now I'm cutting 3 at a time. And remember, this was origami paper, so that's why it's much thinner. Here we go. Cool. All right, now I'm going to do, let's see what 4 is, because that was pretty easy. Then you won't have to make your template or trace as many. I mean, you will use your template, but you just won't have to trace all 15. Look at that. Origami paper is the way to go. But there is something to be said for repetitive crafting. That's why people, I think, like knitting and crocheting, because it's kind of a mindless task. You don't really have to think about it too much. It's muscle memory, and you just keep going. You're doing the same thing over and over again. 4 was easy peasy. Okay, we're down to the end. Well, this is 4. So I'd say 3. 4 is a little trickier. I would say 3 if you're doing the origami, and I would say no more than 2 for construction paper. Down we go. Okay. Now I'm going to put these on my paper, and now I have an easy mess to clean up. So now all I do is throw my little pieces away, just like that. Okay, it's time to glue. Here we go. Easy peasy. My flat part's the bottom. and I'm just going to go for it. Line it up. Whoop. Now, if you do what I did, it's easy to just pull it up. So I had it upside down. Ooh, this one might be trickier, guys. So, okay, you know how we kind of learn. It's trickier to see which one was the bottom and which one was the top. You really do have to investigate a little more when you're not coming in as far. So this one, see how far we came in? And this one we barely did. So then when I open it or when I'm gluing it on top, it's hard to remember which one was the top and which one was the bottom. So that's just something to think about if you're doing that for your class. You might want to have a distinct top and a distinct bottom. It's even hard for me to remember. Okay. These are all, there we go. Maybe I just line them up ahead of time. There we go. So this is my, oh, I gotta flip these. See, it's so tricky. I definitely learn from me, my mistake, and make sure, like, keep with the pumpkin template so it's not as hard to figure out. But I'm seeing this one's going to be cute. I can't wait to see how the apple turns out. There we go. Kind of, it's like when you have a deck of cards and you kind of go like this, or like a stack of papers, you know, just want to make sure that all those ends are lining up so that you don't lean too far. So tomorrow at school, we are having a Thanksgiving feast with the teachers. So tonight I am making sweet potato casserole. I'm in North Carolina. I'm in Charlotte. So we eat things like sweet potato casserole instead of yams. And it might as well be a dessert. It is so good. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, would you please let Chanel and I know what your favorite Thanksgiving Day food is? Is it rolls? Is it the stuffing? Maybe cornbread dressing or casserole if you're from the South, or mashed potatoes, corn. What's your favorite? My favorite all the time at school is when they have Thanksgiving. I love that day. I always buy a school lunch on Thanksgiving Day. Okay, last one. Ooh, I'm getting hungry. I haven't had dinner yet. Oop, nope, just kidding. I've got one more. Or is this my template? Nope, I've got one more. What is your favorite Thanksgiving dish if you celebrate Thanksgiving?
Lindsay says stuffing.
Yes, Lindsay, that's one of my favorites too. Oh, I love stuffing. What's your Chanel?
And I have to say, I am a huge fan of sweet potato casserole as well.
Ooh, I should have you over for dinner, Chanel, except you're in where, Chicago.
Yeah, a little far.
But I already made my crumble. It's so yummy. Okay. Here's our little apple. Let's see. Did we give it a good base? There we go. Cutie. Okay, so we can put the stem on. So if you're using the thin paper, I can see you might need just a couple more because it's not as sturdy as the construction paper. But that's cute, isn't it? Okay, so let's put the little stick or stem. And then let's make the teeniest little leaf. Use my little punch for part of the leaf. And then I'm going to go around and make the cutest little leaf. Okay, let's see. How will I do this? Let me just put a little glue. It's so cute. I love little things. They're just so adorable. You could almost put two. I almost feel like I can put two of these. Let me put another leaf. Another leaf. See, I'm just going after that rounded corner, that rounded edge. And then come around like this, like that. I like to do this with my pie crusts too. I'm using a little cookie cutter or just my knife. Make little fun leaves. So let's do this. Maybe. Got more glue on my finger. And that goes on there. It's cute when it rolls up a little bit. Let's see. Is it going to stick? There we go. Ah! I'm almost there, guys. Cuteness. Okay, let me show you. Isn't that a cute little apple? That was cute and fun. You could put a vine on your pumpkin if you wanted to. Okay, let me clean this up so you can kind of see what we made. My marker bled all over my fingers. Okay, so I've got my cute pumpkin. And got our little apple. Now let me see if I can bring this down like this so you can see it from this perspective. I don't know. There we go. Aren't they little cutie pies? I like those. I could see how somebody could go crazy on these and just make a whole little fruit bowl. These could come over here. I kind of like how they flip up a little bit. Makes it look like a real leaf. Adorbs. All right, let me do this. Remember, and I think Chanel probably put this in the Q&A as well. But if you'd find me on at La Cozy Casita, I'd love to see what you came up with. And tag Learn with Michaels. And then let me flip to my other front-facing camera here. I have such a great time with you guys. Let's see. Boop, there we are. Okay, let me get it up. There we go. I always am surprised by my hair when I come back up. Like, whoa, girl, what were you doing? Thank you so much for joining us. This was so cute and fun. Look, I wasn't expecting to make a cute little apple, but I love it. And a little pumpkin. Aren't these so cute? So fun. You could make a little curly Q, like a little vine would be so cute on the pumpkin. I just love these. Look, doesn't it look cuter this way than from the front or from the other view? You can see all the detail. So fun. Okay, well, thank you for joining me. Let's see, what do we have next? I'm doing a lot of those classes. I'm teaching 3 of those. What are they called, Chanel? I'm sorry, you said it at the beginning of class and now I can't remember what they're called, but they're the little Christmas series or holiday series of crafts. I cannot remember what they call them. The winter workshop. So I'm teaching 3 of those. I'm going to be teaching the clay peppermint photo holder. I'm going to be teaching the watercolor snowflake class and the clay ornament dish. So I will be doing those. Those will be my next classes coming up. And before that, next week, I'm teaching a placemats class. So it's something that you can use around Hanukkah or Christmas, and it's just kind of weaving, the placemats. It's after Thanksgiving, so you won't be able to use these for Thanksgiving, but it's a good skill because you can use it for lots of things coming up. Okay, well, thanks again for joining me. I always have the best time with you, and I hope to see you next class. Goodbye.